Okay, thank you everyone for your patience. Karen Hodgins has, she's mentioned that she had no real comments to make regarding. Thank you everyone for your patience. So there being no further discussions of the delegation, we will now consider item 5.3.4 report PD-04-21 zoning bylaw amendment application by Dennis and Karen Hodgins. Do members of council have any questions or comments?
We have Councillor Rajima.
Councillor Rajima, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if this question came up when we considered this before, but is there anything preventing somebody from putting several garden suites on a lot? Not really relevant to this, but future discussion.
Still an important question. I will start by directing that to Ms. Dale. And if she'd like to pass that to another member of planning staff, she's able to. She's welcome to.
So, Mr. Chairman, there wouldn't be anything to prevent somebody from applying to have more than one garden suite on their property. Somebody could have parents and in-laws, for example. They could put them both on the same property.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Oh, I see Matt has
Mr. Bruder, you have your hand up as well, I see. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, that is true. I think there's probably some other limitations that would probably play a factor. One of the things, once you start having multiple garden suites on the property, you'd run into issues from a servicing standpoint too, that I think would probably be somewhat prohibitive eventually. So I just wanted to add that in as well. While there isn't anything per se, there would be some other considerations that would probably, in a lot of cases, be somewhat of a limitation.
Mm-hmm. And so comment through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm wondering if that's maybe something we can think about when we're looking at our zoning bylaw review, and maybe that we have the right or the appropriate permissions in place to prevent something getting carried away when we don't want it to get carried away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Do we have further questions, Councillor?
We have Councillor Russell.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the Planning Department. My understanding is that there was a permit issued on this property prior for a building. Can you give any commentary on what that original permit was for?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor, are you referring to the permit that's allowed the construction that's recently happened to date on the property?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So how it's been structured is the applicant, because they wanted to get going with some of the construction and because they're allowed to construct an accessory building on the property, they went through a building permit process for an accessory building, not for human habitation. And their approach is, should this be approved tonight, then what they would do is they would need to apply. It's an extra process for them, but unfortunately, that's what they chose. They would have to apply for a change of use permit should this get approved, which would require them to come back into the building department for another permit to make it habitable. So right now what they're building, the intent is not to be for human habitation until they go through that change of use permit process.
Thank you, Mr. Bruder. Follow up to that. Any idea why they didn't ask for the garden suite originally, as opposed to the original permit?
Through Mr. Chair, I think, like I said, I think they wanted to expedite some of their construction, and they were already, they had initiated this process, but I think maybe in their own mind, maybe perhaps they didn't realize what the process would, how long it would take, although we try to give them every indication of that as they go through it. But I think they just wanted to expedite things, and this was the way for them to start building. And then, as they're building, then they would apply for the change of use. So they didn't do it at the outset because they didn't necessarily have approval for a garden suite yet. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bruder. Follow up again, Mr. Chair. One of the requirements, and I'm just pulling it up, one of the requirements for the garden suite is that it is a portable unit. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
Just again, looking at again what is currently residing on this lot, it looks like it's a permanent structure. Is there any idea of as far as what waste goes, foundation, anything beyond just the structure above ground that you can provide details on?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, definitely a good point. It's something that we've run into in the past as well, mainly because, you know, when we talk about the building code, when we even talk about our own policy and our OPs in our official plan pertaining to garden suites, we don't really have a definition of what's portable. I mean, this particular unit, it's done, I believe it's Maple Leaf Homes who specialize in prefabricated dwellings such as this one. And really what it is, you know, it's a prefab unit that comes in on a flatbed, gets plunked down on a foundation or a slab. And then ostensibly, you know, when the temporary use is up, you know, it could be, again, disconnected from its servicing, disconnected from the foundation and put back on the flatbed and trucked away. So, you know, could one argue that that could be considered portable? I would say there could be an argument there. But further than that, we've had other applications where these garden suites have been proposed, and instead of them, you know, making sure that can be removed from the site, what we've said is, okay, well, you know, if that's not the intention, then it needs to be able to be converted to a use that is not for human habitation after the 20-year temporary use period expires. Because in a lot of these cases, like I said, accessory buildings, like farm out buildings and things, they are a permitted use. So provided that it would meet that, we would be okay. We would consider it meeting the intent of our policy if that use was converted in the future back to non-residential. So there's kind of those two considerations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bruder.
Thank you very much. I see Mayor Easton's hand is up. Go ahead, Mayor Easton.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. We're talking a lot tonight about compliance, and I'm going to follow along with Councillor Russell's questioning. And I'm noting some of the comments that have been made by regional planning staff and the definition of portable to them. There is some intentions and compatibility, if you will, or some connection to an intended crawl space. So I just want to know what this temporary building that was an accessory building, what was this building put on? Is it on a slab on grade, or is it a true foundation, or is it a crawl space?
For you, Mr. Chair, it is on a foundation, full foundation.
And thank you very much, Mr. Bruder. And is that considered to be compatible with our policies here at the town?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you're pertaining to accessory buildings, farm buildings, there's nothing that would preclude that from being the case on one not used for human habitation. And then, you know, like I said, with these garden suites, there isn't any, you know, actual verbiage that says it can't be put on a foundation. It just says it has to be basically somewhat interpreted to be portable. And I would add just a little bit of commentary that, you know, we've considered this and we've talked amongst ourselves, staff have, as this has come forward, and a couple of the other ones, we're starting to see more of these. And we do realize that, you know, and we're going to do this as part of our zoning as well. We need to be reviewing some of our policies pertaining to these garden suites, because there's a little bit of kind of lack of detail in some of the policy wording to date, which we'd like to tighten up on a little bit moving forward, even when it pertains to things like size. So that's something we're definitely considering as we move forward as well.
And Mr. Chairman, so further to this, just because I do require more clarification, because I wouldn't have expected that a foundation would have been part and parcel of the plan for an accessory building. And so when that accessory building, well, if it is returned to an accessory building, then the foundation obviously remains, which could change the use of the building in the future. If not for living, would it attract a business? to that building, or to that property that may or may not be compatible?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, I think anything, could be possible. Would I say that, it would really encourage a business to locate, in that particular, whether or not it has a foundation? I don't think so. But, I couldn't say that's impossible.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I believe that the whole idea behind Garden Suites is one that we've fully embraced as a council. I think the staff are working with individuals. There is certainly some important reasons why they are of value to families. There's no question about that. But I'm paying close attention to Mr. Bruder's comments in terms of the need for us to make sure that our policies are tightened up, because it would appear to me that there may be some interpretation. I wouldn't like that to continue. Pretty soon, by the time we've had a few of these, we'll have an interesting looking policy for sure if we don't put some barriers around this. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Bruder.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and in line with some of the questioning that we've heard, and through you to Mr. Bruder, and you did mention that we're looking or needing to tighten up, and as we see more of these, and we are seeing more of these, I think for the last probably 12 months we've seen 4 or 5 of these come forward. My question is there any checking that we do, or is there any follow-up that we do over the course of that 20 years just to confirm the use that it was originally agreed to? I'm thinking about changes in people's lives, and things don't stay the same for a set period of time. And maybe a change that happens, and I just wondered if there's any thought around a knock on the door, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, just to say hello and just checking to see that we're still working within the agreement, and that this is still as it was agreed back in February of 2021.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I think definitely good point, and something we could work towards. I mean, as we've talked about this more and more, and you're right, we are seeing more of these. It's a little bit of a balancing act as well, because these properties, a lot of them are confined by pretty strict policy, whether it's greenbelt policy. So we're trying to work with these owners to allow them to kind of figure out their own succession planning in some cases, or family planning on their properties. But as part of this, what's come out of it is, because there's more of them, we want to keep better track for sure about of the ones that are out there. We're going to be making sure that we have a complete list accompanied with mapping as well. So as staff come and go, we remain aware of these things. And I think as well, not a bad idea for us to look at, maybe there is some type of checkup we could do after a certain amount of time. So definitely points well taken, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any other questions? Just I have some questions of my own. Just speaking of policy that the mayor had mentioned, I'm reading this, and whereas the Environmental Protection Agency area policies apply within the banks of Spring Creek, the prime agriculture and conservation areas are applicable to the entirety of the subject lands. So in saying that, if this were a home to be built, would this pass? Would this be allowed to be a home? And what would define a home as opposed to a portable, temporary, or mobile granny? Explain to me the difference in those two concepts.
Okay, Mr. Chair. So first of all, I mean, I think what you're asking is if this was the only single detached dwelling, say there wasn't one, this was being proposed, at its location, would it be permitted there? Is that the first question that you were asking? Would we allow it?
If you're allowed one, I believe,
Mhm.
correct me if I'm wrong, but would you be allowed to build two?
No, that's why the temporary use bylaw is put into effect. That's the main difference here. The temporary use bylaw wouldn't apply to the first one. It would apply to this particular one, which is intended for a family member. So that'd be the difference.
And then moving forward, so what is the difference between a home and a temporary granny suite, or a mobile granny suite, or a portable granny suite? The region, and I asked that because the region had concerns about its portability.
Mr. Chair, that's exactly right. They did. And, you know, like I said, portability, like the way it's mentioned or not mentioned for that matter, and some of the policy leaves it up to interpretation. The difference between a house that's, you know, intended to stay there and this one is admittingly some like very minimal, but the main difference is, like I said, we have this temporary use agreement, which is registered on title. So what that does is that requires it to either, be converted to a non-residential use. And we don't even, as long as there is one of the buildings that's converted to non-residential use or otherwise removed, meaning there would be flexibility there. For instance, let's say this was approved and this was built on the property. If the property owner wanted to keep this one and remove the other one or convert the other one to non-residential, that would be okay too, because to your point, you are allowed one. So really what it is this temporary use agreement is really what it all hinges on, because it requires that one of those be either taken away, i.e. the portability aspect, or they have to be converted to accessory building, which would be a permitted use.
Thank you very much. And the reason why I ask these questions, I took a drive up there to see, I was curious about what the environmental concerns or the agricultural value of this property. And I have to be honest, I was surprised to see that there appeared to be a home that was built with a 2-car garage yet to be constructed from what I could see. That being said, the portable structure or the Maple Leaf Homes, is this a home, or is this is a home that was delivered or assembled? So there would be a kitchen, bedrooms, bathrooms, all of that would be all there.
So it's my understanding, Mr. Chair, that the bones of the home are built off-site in a controlled environment, brought onto site. Where the change of use permit that I mentioned before comes into play is that's to allow for occupancy of that for habitation. So you're right, the home for the most part is built off-site in a controlled environment, and then the unit is brought to the site.
And this is a portable structure. And again, when I saw this structure, it looked like there was a basement. Is there a basement?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, there is one as part of the foundation, yes.
Okay. And okay. So I'm just trying to understand better, trying to get a better understanding of portable, mobile, temporary versus a home. And I don't see any. A final question I have, like in building a property or building a home like this, what sort of, would there be any DC charges, or would there be any parks and dedication, or how does that play?
Mr. Chair, there wouldn't be the parkland dedication, but there would be, and actually, I don't think there would be development charges either for the garden suite. So no, there wouldn't be.
Okay.
Temporary use.
Thank you very much. All right. Any members of council have any further questions? Okay. There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Rinchema, Council approved zoning bylaw amendment application PLZATUT 202-00108 in the name of Dennis and Karen Hodgins. Council enact and pass zoning bylaw attached as Appendix B of Report PD-04-21 to amend the zoning regulations for lands at 5179 Spring Creek Road, subject to the following conditions. A, that the owner enters into a temporary use agreement with the town to ensure that the dwelling is removed or converted into a non-residential use upon expiry of the temporary use bylaw. B, that a cash deposit or letter of credit in the amount of $5,000 be submitted to the town to ensure that the above agreement is complied with. And C, that the temporary use bylaw not be presented to council until the conditions A and B above have been complied with. Council deem that zoning bylaw conforms to the official plan for the town of Lincoln. I will now ask our clerk to call the vote.
Counselor Brunei,
Yes.
Counselor McPherson,
Yes.
Counselor Micklick,
No.
Counselor Reimer,
Yes.
Counselor Rajima,
Yes.
Counselor Russell,
Yes.
Counselor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
and Counselor Pachariva has left the meeting, so he is marked absent, and that carries.
Thank you very much. Our seventh, written correspondence from Elizabeth Hayes with respect to item 5.3.6 PD-03-21 Bill 229 amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act and the Planning. We will now consider item 5.3.6 report PD 0321 Bill 229 amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act and the Planning Act. Do members of council have any questions or comments? Councillor Russell.
Just a point of order. I think we skipped 5.35 about the detached garage.
We're on the report PD 14, Counselor. So if you go to page 12 of your script.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the original agenda.
Oh. Sorry, you are.
We have a delegation, Counselor.
Okay.
So we're on section 5.3.5.
5.3.5. So
PD 1421. Heritage permit application 4918 King Street, Beamsville, construction of a detached garage and parking area. It's in your script, Counselor.
okay, so just on page 12 of the script.
Correct.
Our seventh, John Fraccioni is not here to speak to that at this time.
He is.
Okay, so our seventh delegation is John Fraccioni speaking to PD-14-21 Heritage Permit Application 4918 King Street, Beamsville, construction of a detached garage and parking area. My apologies for going off script there. John I don't believe is with us to speak to this, so.
He is here.
Is he here?
He's in the meeting. Yes, he is.
Okay. Do any members of council have any questions for John Fraccioni?
So we have a hand up by Counselor Brunei.
Counselor Brunei?
You're on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair, to the delegation. Mr. Fraccioni, I'm wondering if you could speak to if this is the appropriate time. If this isn't the appropriate time, then the chair can tell me to hold my comments. But you know, we have some discussion about the cladding of the material of the garage. And I know at one time there was discussion that this was going to be masonry. I'm wondering if Mr. Fraccioni could speak to the makeup of the actual garage in terms of you know, the cladding and what has transpired from masonry to where we maybe have landed, and maybe he could comment and extrapolate. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. Julie, I tried to start my video, but it says the host has stopped my video, so I don't know if.
Let me just, I don't have that showing here.
Start my video. There we go. Okay. It must have been somebody else. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me in, through you, Chair Michalek, to Councillor Brunet. Again, the garage was no different than the application that was before you earlier this evening. We had the intent of this garage is to replace the one that's I'm sure Councillor Brunet and Councillor Pachariba will attest that they've been getting phone calls, as well as Monica, to the garage that's existing will be removed as part of the townhouse development next door here. And this is to replace that garage and go. So we had, when we started the design, we thought we were doing something good by making masonry to match Woodburn Cottage and the heritage aspect of it. And then we received comments from the Heritage Committee, and a very detailed one from the chair of the Heritage Committee, stating that, you know, to keep the heritage look and feel of the property, barns or garages were usually constructed out of wood, not out of masonry, to match the house. So we changed the whole entire structure. We flipped it, we rotated it 90 degrees, so that you would see the side of the garage and that elevation rather than the front of the garage. And we put some detail or some decorative aspects on the side of it with a little peaked roof with a window on it, and made larger windows and changed the makeup of the exterior to a wooden or hardy board. We're still kicking around both areas to see which one, both options to see which one is best. But they want that the wood look was what the comments we got back from Heritage Committee. So we've changed that and we've made it either out of wood or out of hardy board, which is a cement board that looks like wood. It's just a little more durable than an actual wood product.
Councillor Michalek, can I have a follow-up question and a comment?
Yeah. Certainly.
So thank you, through your chair, to Mr. Fraccioni. So I appreciate that clarification. I think it's important that, you know, we understand what we can expect when this construction actually occurs. And I do believe, you know, credit should be given where credit is due. I'm really happy to see, you know, when you delegated to the Heritage Committee, that the large, and I emphasize the large parking driveway area that you're, you know, looking to construct, because it is quite large. Let's make no bones about it. But I do want to give full credit that I think it's really important, and I think it's great that you're recommending this to be constructed in turf stone, whereby the grass would actually grow up through the actual paving stone to keep a very maintain a green space. I think that's really, really important. And I really take my hat off to you for working with the appropriate people to make that happen. But through you, Chair, I just have another question to the delegate. So, you know, we've heard tonight, Mr. Fraccioni, that, you know, we've heard words from Mrs. Redfern, you know, that this property was built. And again, I want to emphasize, you know, we're now talking about the property where the Woodburn Cottage is. We're not talking about the property that has been severed where the townhouses are going. This is the property where there is a heritage building that's been there since 1834. We heard tonight the word elegance. We heard unique. We heard rare. We heard high degree of craftsmanship. So through you, Chair, to the delegation, I ask you, Mr. Fraccioni, will this garage, which I really think is not a garage, it's a barn, 42 by 34 by 20 feet, 1,428 square feet, sitting beside an 1834 building of elegance and unique. I asked you, Mr. Fraccioni, how do you intend to keep this look like the appropriate touch and feel that it's the right build for that property? Because I have concerns of the size of this and the way it will look beside the Woodbury Cottage. I look forward to your comments. Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Fraccioni.
Through you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Brunet that this is a very touchy subject, and it demands the highest quality. Since we've been here, we've spent countless hours. We did some renovations this year, some cosmetic touch-ups to the exterior, because again, everything on Woodburn Cottage is constructed out of wood. We consulted with heritage experts as to the appropriate way to renovate them. And again, through the guidance of the Heritage Committee with the town of Lincoln and all its members, we've listened, we've heard the intent. I mean, a garage is a garage to some people, a barn is a barn to some people. I guess the intent is to make it look like an old fruit barn. That was typical, according to the Heritage Committee. It was typical to have a fruit barn beside the primary residence, where all the crops would be brought in. They would all be sorted, packaged, and whatever. The comments that we received from the Heritage Committee was, we would really appreciate if this could look like one of those fruit barns. And they sent us examples of some garages that were approved in the town of Grimsby with the same chair that's the chair of the Heritage Committee in Lincoln, was the chair, or I don't know if he still is, of the Heritage Committee in Grimsby at the time. So we took that design aspect and we took those elements and we've incorporated them into the design of this, and to appease Councilor Brunet, to this barn. The intended use of it is basically a boat storage. We have a boat that we'd like to store in the wintertime there, and all the stuff that's currently being housed in the garage or barn that's here on Woodburn Cottage, we'd like to transfer that over. We have some winter tires and some tools and machinery. There's a riding lawnmower. So once we knock this building down, we'll have to have some place to put this material. So I think the design elements and the design of the building itself was, in a large part, through recommendations of the Heritage Committee. So I think the Heritage Committee supported our new design. They thought it was good. The fact that the turf stone is going in, that was something that we wanted to do. That wasn't in our first application, but we always wanted to do it because, like everybody else, we don't want to see a big, huge driveway. I don't want to have to asphalt that driveway or concrete that driveway. Stone is nothing but a pain in the butt. So the turf stone is a fantastic alternative. It's not a cheaper alternative. It's a much better alternative than any of the others. So I think the design elements weren't something that we took lightly, and I think we've proven that through the design of this building with the recommendation of the Heritage Committee.
Councillor?
Yeah, Councillor Michalak, I want to thank you for the opportunity for asking the questions, and I want to thank Mr. Fraccioni, the delegation, for not only coming in front of the Committee of the Whole tonight, but taking the time to meet with the Heritage Committee and really stand up and take the bullets and answer the question, to the best of his ability. So thank you.
Terrific. Who do we have next? Ms. Kirklos.
Counselor McPherson.
Counselor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello, John. Thank you for coming out tonight. And my line across Janine is certainly going to be along the lines of Councilor Bernays. I don't think there's any question that this is a very, very special property in our town. And, I would tell you that each time I go by the Woodburn Cottage, it draws me to look at it. And it is unique in that as far as I would say other heritage buildings in our town, by its location, being on King Street in Beamsville, and also by its higher look and feel. And I'm talking about the whole site. It's not just the cottage, it is the site. And when you come by it, it's magnificent in its look and feel. And I know that that our hands are tied with regards to the current bylaw and how it applies to the site. But I would hope that there's some flexibility in what would be built here. I would absolutely echo the comment that this is a very, very large garage. In fact, it's the size of a bungalow. It's the size of a house. And if you're talking about 20 feet high, it is large. It is very large. So that being the case, it's obviously not right in front of the cottage, but it is going to change the look and feel of that site considerably. And you can do all you want about making it look like a heritage building. It's a large building, and with it, I've got a 5,100 square foot parking lot. So those two things combined are going to completely change the look and feel of the Woodburn Cottage property. They have to know the size of the shed or the building that you're taking down in the back. I don't think it's anywhere near this big. And I guess when looking at, as you mentioned, the storage of a boat, I would really hope that there's alternatives that we would explore to take care of that boat. Because, I guess, I'm reaching out for, to your heritage, to your heritage heart to say, does this fit here? Does it really fit here? We don't have a lot to vote against it as far as the planning and the bylaws go, but I really question, the long-term impact on this particular site. So, it's obviously for a purpose. And so, I'm thinking that, to come back to you and say, hey, what about a nice 2-car garage that goes in there that is, kind of a standard size, standard height, and maybe a parking lot that fits to that 2-car garage, or let's find another home for your boat. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor McPherson. Next, I believe we have Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair Miklick. So this plan did come to the Heritage Committee, and the design on the proposed garage was approved by the Heritage Committee and also encouraged in that style. It's a large property. A large building like that would have been something that could have possibly been on the property at the time period. I personally don't have a problem with it. I really like the the stone pavers. I think that's fantastic because it's a green space. This side of the property, there's a lot of scrub right now. There's not really anything going on. I personally think this will actually work very well, and I'm in support of this application. And when you look at the size of the garage to the pool, to me, I don't know, I don't seriously have a problem with it. I have an extremely large separate garage on my farm. So to me, it fits. And as I said, the Heritage Committee was supportive of this application. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Timmers. Do we have any other hands up?
We do not.
Okay.
Well, my hand up. If I could, Chair, just to reply to some of the comments, especially Councillor McPherson's. I mean,
Okay, sure.
Councillor, I think, you know, the comment that you made with the, you know, your hands are tied. I don't think we've proven over the course of the last 5 years that we've been building and doing business in Beamsville that we're, you know, not open to suggestions, and we're not open to working together with the town to find the best possible solution. We feel that this is like a typical garage would have a 10-foot wall and then an 8-foot peaked roof on it to bring it to an 18-foot height overall. A detached garage that's built on any of the older 2-story single-family homes that are built in and around the town of Lincoln, where you would be anywhere between 16 to 18 feet. We're going to 20 feet just because the boat is that high, and we're actually measuring right now because we may be able to drop the height. There was some concern about the height. We had assumed that the boat on the trailer, because it is a sailboat frame on it, that it has a big keel, and the height of it was 14 feet. So we needed a 14-foot-6 door at the front, and that's what generates the height. But there's been some discussion, and I think it's actually 12 feet. So we might be able to drop this by 2 feet. Well, we're going to find that out in the next couple days. But I think we've done, you know, the garage itself, typical garage would be, you know, 25 by, and again, you can't, I'm not going by ordinary standards of today's build, because we all know that, you know, the days of 50-foot lots are long gone. But back in the day when we built on 50 and 60-foot lots, a typical garage would be 25 feet wide and 30 to 32 feet long. So, you know, we're asking for a little bit more just because of the size of, you know, our intended use for it. So I think we've put a lot of thought and effort into this, and we've done, you know, the best that we could with the need that's there to try and satisfy everybody's wishes. And the driveway, again, with the turf stone, it won't be this massive asphalted driveway that's going to give it a commercial use. I mean, if you look at the pictures, that is what a turf stone driveway and parking lot looks like. So you'd almost have to be standing on top of it to see the actual concrete turf stone. From the road, it would look like a grassed area, we're assuming. So and that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fraccione. Any other questions to the presenter, to the delegation? I just have a question, Mr. Fraccione, with relation to the drawing that was supplied. The dimensions for the garage, the proposed garage, are noted, but the dimensions for the existing dwelling or the pool are not. And I'm just trying to get an idea of what the scale, trying to get an idea of the scale. Like, I don't know, how big is the swimming pool in relation to this garage? Just to dovetail a little bit to Councillor McPherson's questions regarding the size.
Give me a second, Councillor, I can pull it up.
Just It's on the site plan, I guess, page 3 of 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 42 by 34. And I know I have a swimming pool myself. It's 41 feet. So I'm just trying to get an idea of the size of
The current, the current pool with the deck, like the fenced in area for the pool is 18.92 meters, which is 62 feet long.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So with this drawing that you supplied, are the is the scale of it roughly close to what?
Yes, yes, it would
Okay.
be, that drawing would have been prepared by a licensed surveyor through IBI. So they've prepared the drawings and the architect has then taken that and put the drawing or the new building, the garage on at downscale.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so I don't see any hands up there. There being no further questions of the delegation, we will now consider item 5.3.5, report PD-14-21 heritage permit application, 4918 King Street, Beamsville, construction of a detached garage and parking area. Do members of council have any questions or comments to the report? Okay, I don't see any. There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Rengiema. Council approve heritage permit application PLHP 202-00001 in the name of FBH Ontario Inc. to construct a detached garage and parking area subject to conditions outlined in Appendix A, and that the heritage permit expire 2 years from the date of final approval by council. I will now ask our clerk to call the vote.
Thank you. Councillor Brunei,
No.
Councillor McPherson,
No.
Councillor Miklick,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
and Councillor Patriva is absent. That carries.
Okay, so here we go. Might sound like a deja vu, folks. We received written correspondence from Elizabeth Hayes with respect to item 5.3.6 PD-03-01 Bill 229 amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act and Planning Act. We will now consider item 5.3.6, report PD-03-21 Bill 229 amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act and the Planning Act. Do members of council have any questions or comments? There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell that we received report PD-03-21 regarding Bill 229, Protect, Support, and Recover from COVID-19 Act Budget Measures 2020. I will now ask our clerk to call the votes.
Councillor Brunei,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miklick,
Yes.
Councillor Patriva is marked absent. Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
and that carries.
This concludes all delegations and correspondence received for the portion of the agenda, and I have a motion moved by the mayor that council receive and file as information the following delegations and correspondence: Stephanie Day, Caitlin Whiteley, and Ryan Herman of Niagara SPCA, Julia Redfern and John Arians of IBI Group, Michael Ecker of Vineland Growers, Heather Sewell of NPG Planning Solutions, Karen Hodgins, John Fraccioni, and Elizabeth Haynes. I will now ask our clerk to call the vote.
Thank you. Counselor Brunei,
Yes.
Counselor McPherson,
Yes.
Counselor Micklick,
Yes.
Counselor Patriva marked absent, Counselor Reimer,
Yes.
Counselor Rajima,
Yes.
Counselor Russell,
Yes.
Counselor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Yes.
and that carries.
We are now considering consent agenda item 5.2.1, Heritage Municipal Heritage Citizen Advisory Committee minutes of December 10th, 2020. Would any member of council like to remove this item from the consent to discuss? There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers that council receive for information Municipal Heritage Citizen Advisory Committee minutes of December 10th, 2020. I will now ask our clerk to call the vote.
Counselor Brunei,
Yes.
Counselor McPherson,
Yes.
Counselor Micklick,
Yes.
Counselor Reimer,
Yes.
Counselor Rajima,
Yes.
Counselor Russell,
Yes.
Counselor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Yes.
Counselor Patriva marked absent, that carries.
We will now consider item 5.3.7, report PD-09-21, building activity report for October to December 2020, 2019-2020 building activity comparison. Do members of council have any questions or comments? I see a hand up. Mr. Kirkopoulos, CAO, would you like to comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could, just really quickly, I think this is a report that I did want to highlight because I think it's important that we acknowledge that even during a pandemic, we've still seen a high level of private sector investment, and that includes, if you look at the report, everything from residential, commercial, and industrial. So a good message in terms of economic development, putting people to work in our community. And so I just wanted to make those comments for council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do not see any further hands or comments.
Nope, no further hands.
All right.
We do have, sorry, we have Counselor McPherson.
Councillor McPherson, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment. I was looking
Got it in there.
for the hand, so I couldn't find it. But I just wanted to say that even though I don't have any questions about this report, I find it of great value, and I really enjoy getting this report each time it comes out to see how we're doing quarterly and how we're doing against previous periods. So just to the staff, I certainly find value in continuing to see this report and appreciate it. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I agree with you. I appreciate the report as well. I've asked questions in the past with regards to the numbers and their relativity to how times are going. And I've always been appreciative of staff's responses with how it's all timing of applications and executions of these sorts of building activities. We can just take a drive around the neighborhood and see what's being built and what's being planned, what we've seen come before us and what we have not seen come before us. So I think it's great. It's been fantastic. I will now ask our clerk to call the vote.
Counselor Brunei,
Yes.
Counselor McPherson,
Yes.
Counselor Micklick,
Yes.
Counselor Reimer,
Yes.
Counselor Rajima,
Yes.
Counselor Russell,
Yes.
Counselor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Yes.
Counselor Patriarca marked absent, that carries.
Okay, we have concluded Planning and Economic Development Committee agenda. We will now rotate to allow Councillor and Chair Paul McPherson to assume the chair at this time for the General Business and Finance Committee agenda.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General Business and Finance Agenda 6.1 delegations. We have no delegations this evening for the General Business and Finance Committee. Consent agenda, we are now considering consent agenda item 6.2.1, Lincoln Public Library Board Minutes of December 15th, 2020. Would any member like to remove this item from the consent agenda to discuss? No? There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councilor Russell that Council receive for information Lincoln Public Library Board Minutes of December 15th, 2020. Madam Clerk, would you please call out the vote?
Counselor Brunei,
Yes.
Counselor McPherson,
Yes.
Counselor Miklick,
Yes.
Counselor Reimer,
Yes.
Counselor Rajima,
Yes.
Counselor Russell,
Yes.
Counselor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Yes.
and Counselor Patriarca is marked absent, that carries.
We now move to 6.3 reports on the agenda. We will now consider item 6.3.1, report FN-02-21, the drainage loan 4531 Maple Grove Road. The clerk will now remove Councilor Reimer from the meeting during the following discussion with respect to FN-02-21 as he declared interest earlier and will not participate.
And he has been removed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do members of council have any questions or comments?
I don't see any.
None?
Nope.
There being no further discussion, a motion moved by Councilor Timmers that we receive and file report FN-02-21, the drainage loan 4531 Maple Grove Road, that we approve the tile drainage loan application by Tony Scamballaruri, pardon me for that pronunciation right now, having been inspected and issued on an appropriate completion certificate, and approve the borrowing bylaw attached as Appendix A in order to apply to through the regional municipality of Niagara for a loan in the amount of $50,000 on behalf of Tony Scamballaruri pursuant to the Tile Drainage Act, and that we direct staff to make repayment arrangements with the landowner via local improvement charges on the annual tax bills of Town of Lincoln, Con 2, Part Lot 6, 4531 Maple Grove Road. I will now ask Madam Clerk to call out the vote.
Counselor Brunei,
Yes.
Counselor McPherson,
Yes.
Counselor Miklick,
Yes.
and Counselor Reimer has declared an interest, and Counselor Patriarca is marked absent. Counselor Rajima,
Yes.
Counselor Russell,
Yes.
Counselor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
and that carries.
The clerk will now reinstate Councilor Reimer to the meeting.
Thank you. He's back in.
We've now concluded the General Business and Finance Committee agenda. We will now rotate to allow Councilor and Chair Patriarca, or the
It will
Vice
be
Chair,
Chair Reimer. Yes.
Vice Chair Reimer to assume the chair at this time for the Community Services and Infrastructure Committee agenda.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Reimer, take it away.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm very sorry, but I had a question. Mr. Chairman.
Pardon me.
Mr. Chairman McPherson.
Okay,
I had a
I'm
question.
sorry, I missed
I
that
didn't- I
question.
didn't see your hand. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor.
Well, it's always difficult getting your cursor moved from one point to the other. And I can probably ask the question because it didn't have anything to do with the report. It's just that I wanted to hear from Mr. Wagner, the treasurer. Madam Chairman, would you recommend that I leave this until the end of the meeting and deal with it under committee remarks?
Is it with respect to the report, Madam Mayor?
No, it's not in respect to a report.
Then if you want to, yes, I would prefer it. Remarks.
Okay.
That's fine.
Chair Reimer, I'm sorry for the interruption. I'll speak of it later. Thank you.
No problem, Amy Houston. Thank you, Chair McPherson. We are now at the Community Services Infrastructure Committee agenda. Welcome here. We have no delegation 7.1 tonight for the Community Services Infrastructure. 7.2 our consent agenda. We are now considering consent agenda item 7.2.1, Age-Friendly Citizen Advisory Committee minutes of December 3rd, 2020. Would any member like to remove this item from the consent agenda to discuss? Mayor Easton, I assume your hand is still up?
Oh, it's quite all right. I'm putting it down immediately.
Okay,
Thank you very much,
thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no hands, no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson that council receive for information Age-Friendly Citizen Advisory Committee minutes of December 3rd, 2020. Julie, would you please call for the vote?
Thanks, Councillor Brunet,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miklick,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Yes.
that carries.
Thank you, Julie. 7.3 reports. We will now discuss item 7.3.1. Report CS-01-21, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream. Do members of council have any questions or comments? There being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson. Receive for information report CS-01-21 regarding the Town of Lincoln's submission to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream, and that council approve the projects as identified in this report, awards Lincoln's allocation of $173,980 as attached in Appendix A, and that council directs staff to notify the Ministry of Infrastructure of the Town of Lincoln's Council's comments in order for these projects to be considered for nomination by the Province of Ontario to the federal government. Julie, would you call a vote?
Thanks, Councillor Brunet,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miklick,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Support.
and Councillor Patrick is marked absent. That carries.
Thank you, Julie. Next item, item 7.3.2, report CS-02-21, 2021 Museum Objects Accession. Do members of council have any questions or comments to this report?
No comments, Chair.
We got, there
Well, we
comes
do have
one.
Councillor Rajima.
Go ahead, Councillor Jima.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair. I had someone reach out to me in the last couple of weeks and ask what happens when, as a result of an archaeological study, items are found related to Indigenous people having been there in the past. What happens to those items? I've heard different opinions or different explanations on what happens. So I guess their question was really, is it something that's ever going to make their way to our museum?
Thank you, Councillor. Through to staff. Who wants to take that on?
I can start, Chair, and
Thank you,
then
Director McKay.
you're welcome. So in the case of the artifacts that were found on the museum site when we were doing archaeological studies and assessments, yes, those artifacts are coming back and will actually be on display. There were not a lot of Indigenous artifacts found at that point and at that site. In some cases, they're left in situ. So in the case of the indigenous artifacts that were found on the Cherry Heights property in town that people have been talking about, they were actually post molds for longhouses, several of them, and they will just stay there. That's why the site is capped and will be preserved. So it does depend on what is found, and if what is found is removed and then cleaned and then photographed and studied, or if what is found is left in the site.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Any other, is that it, Councillor Njima? Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I have a motion moved by Mayor Easton that we receive for information report CS-02-21 2020 Museum Objects Accession and accept 849 objects into the permanent museum collection and direct staff to obtain the appropriate appraisal so that the value of the objects may be confirmed and provided to the town's insurer for their information. Julie, could you call the vote?
Councillor Brunei,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miklick,
Yes.
Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton,
Yes.
Councillor Patriva marked absent. That carries.
Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
Moving along, we will now discuss item 7.3.3, report CS-03-21, museum policy updates, collections and exhibition policies. Do members of council have any questions or comments? Not seeing any, no further discussion. I have a motion moved by Councillor Mikulik. Receive for information report CS-03-21 regarding museum policy updates to the collections and exhibition policies, and approve and adopt the policy changes for implementation effective immediately by museum staff. Julie, could you please call the vote?
Thank you. Councillor Brunei,
Yes.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Miklick,
Yes.
Councillor Patriva marked absent. Councillor Reimer,
Yes.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers,
Yes.
Mayor Easton.
Yes.
That carries.
Thank you, Julie. The clerk will now remove Councillor Mikulik from the meeting during the following discussion with respect to PW-01-21, as he declared interest earlier and will not participate.
Thank you. He's been removed.
Thank you. We will now discuss item 7.3.4, report PW-01-21, Jordan Village Improvement Project Budget Update. I believe our CAO had some comments, if I was not mistaken.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, while Walter and Dave get set up with the presentation.
Oh, my apologies.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I will make some opening comments and just, I think, remind council where we were a number of months ago when we dealt with the capital budget and the fact that staff were directed to go back. We had heard a number of comments from members of council, some concerns that were expressed at the particular time in terms of the technologies that were used, in terms of some of the materials that were used. And so staff were directed at that particular point in time to go back to examine this particular project, to have further conversations. And that's what we've done. What you have before you, I think, is a culmination of us doing exactly that, going back and talking to a number of experts, and as well internally as a staff team with our consultants, trying to put in front of council something that I think we can all support, something that I think stays core and foundational to the principles of this particular project, but are also cognizant of budget. And I would suggest, and you'll probably hear these comments later on, there's a large economic development piece to this particular project. When we do come out of the other side of COVID and this pandemic, tourism is going to be extremely important. Attracting people to our community again and restarting our economy is going to be extremely important. So I did want to share those particular comments. Council will also recall during the budget process, we heard from a number of stakeholders. One in particular, I think in this case resonates for me, and that is the Niagara Construction Association. And at that time, they spoke to us about the importance of stimulating the economy, the importance of being as a level of government that issues significant amounts of work to continue with that work, to be that driver of the economy as municipalities and governments are often looked at. And so when I see projects like one of the things I think they left with us is to continue to do your capital programs. If anything, enhance your capital program at this particular point in time. And so I share that all with council to highlight, we've looked at budget, we've looked at technology, and we've talked to our peers in other municipalities. And again, what we have before you, I think, is something that we can support, defend, and both Dave, Walter will take you through that particular presentation. Just to highlight, we did speak with VREC in our own backyard, and we have what I affectionately or proverbially call the tree doctor, who actually works out of that particular facility, Darby McGrath, who really is, I would say, this country's experts on trees. We talked to her about soil cells. You're going to hear a little bit of that feedback. And again, as was directed, we did speak with other municipalities who have used pavers to determine, again, what is the both the positive and the negative, the efficacy of using pavers for particular locations within tourism districts. So all that's covered in the presentation, and I will now turn it over to Dave and Walter to take you through that.
Can you confirm, Chair, that you can see my screen, the presentation?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO, and through you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to say thanks to Council for giving myself and Walter an opportunity tonight to share our presentation with you, and we'll be happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. So right off the bat, the purpose of today's presentation, we want to provide an update on feedback we received from the November 23rd Committee of the Whole workshop session. And that was a great evening. Council had a lot of great feedback, a lot of good suggestions going through that meeting. So we wanted to report back on some of that. We also want to provide Council with a reduced budget for the project. And just a note, there's no impact to the 2021 budget approval, as this project has no levy impact. And we want to talk about some next steps moving forward. Next slide, please. So alignment to Council's strategic priorities. So this project, the Jordan Village Improvement Project, is such an important project. And as you can see, it checks the boxes of a lot of our strategic priorities: connected community with integrated mobility and active transportation network, resilient community, promote health and safety within the community, responsible and sustainable financial management, adapt and respond to a changing climate. When we look at vibrant community, drive economic potential and community well-being, become a top tourist destination, and welcoming community, provide a friendly and inclusive public spaces that are universally accessible to facilitate citizen connections and foster vibrant communities and downtowns. So just a bit of a summary, a recap on the project vision. So the design vision for this project is to create a destination for residents, businesses, and tourists by building a connected and beautified neighborhood that focuses on safety, complete streets, building that into the design, landscape appeal, and local heritage. And some of the highlights that this includes: a new signalized intersection at King and 19th Street, pedestrian square at Main Street and King Street, integration with the new Jordan Museum and existing commercial district, increased neighborhood appeal through landscaping and roadway pavers, focus on investing in our local tree canopy, wayfinding pillars and signage, improved decorative street lighting, dedicated cycling facilities and increased pedestrian connectivity throughout, community parking lot and an arrival zone. So what we heard from the November 23rd Committee of the Whole workshop, and we sort of put this into some main themes. So the first point there, review the proposed soil cell and roadway pavers components of the project to help reduce the overall project costs and determine applicability. We look at opportunities to further enhance the gateway and wayfinding pillars. We want to include electric vehicle charging stations and consideration for paid parking, and also develop a community and local business communication strategy. So looking at the soil cell technology, innovation in green infrastructure, what is it? So it's an underground system that allows increased volume of organic soil beneath hardscape surfaces. And you can see from the image to your right there, there's a bit of a graphic to try and illustrate that. And what this avoids is organic soil compaction around the tree root system. It enhances long-term tree health and health expectancy, increases the growth rate, speed and size of a tree, prevents the cracking and heaving of adjacent sidewalks and roads that surround the tree as the tree grows, promotes large tree canopies, reducing the urban heat island effect, which again is really important when we're looking forward with climate change and increasing temperatures. Provide stormwater quality benefits, and they don't require any ongoing maintenance. So from a stormwater management quality and low impact development perspective, soil cell technology, they can be used in conjunction with other stormwater management systems, such as oil grit separators, for example. And that's referred to a treatment train process. And again, the objective is to help clean the stormwater runoff quality. The soil cells, they capture the first flush it's referred to. So when the rain first hits the road and runoff starts draining off the road, and through that process, we can capture contaminants. We've got some listed here: nutrients, hydrocarbons, heavy metals, and also, more importantly, through that process, the stormwater is also providing irrigation to the root system of the tree to help promote its growth. Next slide, please. So why soil cell technology is recommended for the Jordan Village Improvement Project? So number one, to promote tree health, life expectancy, and growth. We want to build the urban tree canopy in the long term for enhanced streetscape aesthetics, village character, increased shade for climate change, etc. Another important factor is prevent the cracking and heaving of adjacent sidewalks, cycle tracks, and roadways as the trees grow to reduce future maintenance costs and impacts to the streetscape aesthetics and the investment we're making in these surfaces. And another really important part is it's part of the stormwater management strategy for water quality control treatment prior to outletting into the Jordan Valley 20 Mile Creek, which again was a key recommendation that came from the environmental assessment study for this project. How the project budget has been reduced related to soil cell technology components. So the design team, we went away and we went back and we spoke to municipalities who have used soil cells before. And as Mr. CEO highlighted earlier, we reached out to VRIC, who are experts in this field, and we really got a lot of good feedback, from this consultation, and gave us a lot of good advice on, how we can look at further prioritizing this technology on our project. So in an effort, again, looking at costs, the design team, we further have prioritized the soil cell locations throughout the design. and have reduced this component by about 50%. And for example, we've removed soil cells along 19th Street. We believe that in strategic locations where more space exists for the tree health, we can augment those locations in lieu of soil cells. And some of the strategies that we're going to be using for that is we're going to work closely with VRIC's tree scientists on developing some enhanced soil specifications for the trees where we're not going to use soil cells. And we're also going to work with residents along 19th Street, the east side, maybe where we can place trees a little bit further back from the sidewalk areas on private property. So we're going to look at that option as well. Next slide, please. So the remaining soil cells, we're only going to strategically locate those along Main Street, pedestrian square area at the end of Main, south end, Snur Lane, and a few other locations on 19th Street. But we're really following the following criteria for using soil cells with the current design. So basically, where the new tree will be totally surrounded by hardscape surfaces. So concrete, pavement, pavers, etc. That's where we really see the soil cells being very important. And again, in alignment with the consultation we had with some of those partners we talked about earlier. Again, our objective here is to promote long-term tree health, and we do want to prevent heaving damage of sidewalks, even roadways and cycle tracks as the tree grows. And again, part of our stormwater management quality strategy as well. We do want to ensure we have good quality happening with our stormwater runoff, given it's entering into the 20 Mile Creek. So moving from the soil cell component to pavers, and we want to talk here a little bit about pavers. Why paver surface materials were and are recommended for our Jordan Village Improvement Project. So it's really to provide an enhanced long-term streetscape village appeal. Surface design goals for the pavers have been a striking streetscape design as part of our overall vision to be a destination, attract tourism, etc. Another advantage is to help reduce that urban heat island effect, especially in areas where we want to promote pedestrian activity and where we're going to have a lot of pedestrians, gathering. That is another good benefit of pavers. Also using them for wayfinding strategies, long-term durability, and also a traffic calming measure as well. Next slide, please. So the design team, we went back again, looking at where we can reduce costs. And when we look at pavers, and keeping in mind, a balance between, the design aesthetic, the material longevity, and again, looking at maintenance and operational costs and the initial capital costs. And again, some points here on pavers, aesthetics. It gives you that opportunity to have some color and texture. They are reliable in the long term from an aesthetics perspective. Lifespan of pavers is a lot greater than asphalt. When we look at sustainability, energy-wise, a lot less energy to use to produce pavers than producing asphalt. When you look at durability, there's less replacement, less waste. When you compare that to perhaps shaving off asphalt and putting new asphalt on. And as we mentioned earlier, reducing that urban heat effect. Next slide, please. So when we talk about pavers, this is how we've looked at reducing the project budget. But again, the design team was very careful here in not compromising the overall streetscape goals of the project and the vision when we looked at removing pavers from these locations. So we looked at Main Street, removing pavers from Main Street. Again, the road surface from Snur Lane to Wismer. We looked at removing pavers from the road surface, the drivable road surface, from Main Street to 19th Street. And we also looked at removing pavers in the large public parking lot in the parking stalls. So in other words, the main roadways will no longer have paver materials. So in terms of Main Street and Wismer Street, these areas all had, on-street parking bays and have been identified as areas of key focus and attention. So although we removed pavers from the main driving surface of the roadway, we're still recommending that we keep pavers in the on-street parking laybys along the roadway. And we feel that really will help maintain the streetscaping enhancement, helping to connect, again, both ends of Main Street, being one of our objectives on this project. There's also an opportunity. We have a crosswalk down at the north end of Main Street in the retail section. And we definitely have an opportunity to make that a decorative surface and make that really stand out. So, this is a significant reduction in pavers when we look at removing them on these two streets. We believe including the pavers and the laybys, as I mentioned just previously, and other key areas will still provide that aesthetic appeal, and we'll still be able to connect both ends of the street, which is our objective. Next slide, please. So this rendering here is of Main Street, and Wismer Street is kind of the street. I apologize, it doesn't have a label on it, but at the right side of the screen. So as you can see on this rendering, we've removed the pavers from the drivable road surface, but pavers, decorative pavers, still remain in all the parking bays along the roadway. This particular rendering gives you another perspective. So when we look at the left side of the screen at Main Street and where Snur Lane comes in, we're suggesting here we would transition from pavers to asphalt as we head north along Main Street. This particular rendering here gives you a bit of an example on Main Street, again at Church Street, where the new museum property is located. And as you see, the drivable road is proposed to be asphalt, and we've removed pavers from that. But you can still see the decorative pavers in the parking, the bus bay parking for a museum, and you can see how there's decorative pavers in the on-street parking laybys on the side of the street to maintain that streetscape appeal. And in terms of the public parking lot, again, trying to look at where we can help reduce costs. We remove pavers from the parking stalls within the parking lot, but we still are recommending to keep pavers on the main driveway entrance off 19th Street. For that streetscaping, we want to give people that sense of arrival as they enter the parking lot, and as well the wayfinding strategy. And the rendering here can give you a bit of a visual on what I was just referring to. So when you come off 19th Street, we still would like to keep pavers just to really give that streetscape sense of arrival feel as you come into the parking lot. So updated reduced project budget. So based on the soil cell and paver reductions that I've just outlined in the presentation, we were able to reduce the town's budget for this project by 1.1 million. So basically what we're looking at now in terms of a budget as it relates to the town's share for this project is 9.9 million, opposed to $11 million that we previously presented at the Committee of the Whole workshop last year. This particular slide gives you a little more detail on the funding sources for the budget. So the Niagara region, they have a contribution to this project of $1 million. And as we look at the town's cost for this project, we've got about $1.6 million in water and wastewater reserves, about $5.5 million in development charges, and $2.7 million proposed for long-term borrowing, all totaling up to $9.9 million for the town of Lincoln's cost on this project. An update on the gateway and wayfinding pillars. Again, at the committee of the whole workshop, we had a lot of good feedback and suggestions from council on some different ideas. The design team has taken all that feedback back. We're looking at opportunities to further enhance and theme the wayfinding pillars. We're going to be exploring themes celebrating, local history, character, art, local businesses, etc. And the design team will be reporting back with more options in the near future for council's information on that. So in terms of the public parking lot, electric vehicle charging stations, and paid parking meters update. So again, a lot of great feedback from council on this. And just to summarize, again, the proposed parking lot upgrades will include all the necessary infrastructure to accommodate electrical vehicle charging stations. That will happen. That's our mandate for this parking lot. And we're also going to be looking at the paid parking infrastructure as well. So some project next steps. Council to consider approving the reduced 2021 capital budget for this project, which is our subject report tonight that council's considering. Final stakeholder meetings are being scheduled. We want to share our final design plans and coordinate with those landowners. Detailed design is nearly complete. We're finalizing details as we're reviewing those tonight. And we want to get ready to be in a position to tender this project subject to budget approval. Next slide, please. We're developing a community and local business communication strategy, which is very critical to the success of this project. And we are committed to doing an excellent job on this. And we'll be speaking a little more about that. We're going to be bringing in a specific project resource to focus on resident engagement, address project elements, issues, and provide a high level of customer service to our residents and businesses on site. Another exciting initiative, we're going to be piloting a public engagement platform. It's referred to as Bang the Table for the Jordan Village Improvement Project. We've actually branded it for Lincoln to be Speak Up Lincoln. So what this is, it's going to be an online portal for the town, and we'll be able to provide frequent information and updates on the project status to residents, to the public, to businesses. And our objective is we're going to be able to keep that up to date, very frequent, and it'll be a great way to share information of what's happening during the construction phase. And more importantly, residents can share their feedback and have an opportunity to provide comments as well on this platform. So with that, that's the end of the presentation. Happy to answer any questions or comments. Both myself and Walter Neubauer, our manager of engineering services, is here to help with that.
Thank you, Director Graham. Do we have any council have any questions or comments to the report?
So we have the CAO that would like to say a few words.
Go ahead, Mr. CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think maybe just to provide an additional point on the budget in the under the, I think, tenet of being completely transparent around total budget costs. I think one of the things I wanted to highlight, and council will recall, over the last number of years, we also partnered with NPEI to make sure that we were able to bury the wires. And NPI has been a great partner. They've actually covered half the costs of that wire burying effort and that wire burying exercise. So Director Graham and or Walter can probably give me the exact numbers, but it was in the range of a little over $1.4 million initially was that estimate, and NPI came to the table covering half of that. So there have been previous monies allotted to the tune of about $700,000 or a little bit more for that burying of the wires as well. But previous budgets, previous allocations, but I did want to highlight that as well.
Thank you, Mike, for that update. I thought I saw a hand, but I guess I didn't.
It disappeared. Mary.
Mayor Easton, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank the staff for going back and spending quite a lot of time doing what we asked them to do, which was to find, to see what could be shaved from this project. However, Mr. Chairman, I want to draw attention to the fact that we do have an increasing local voice on the matter of low impact development. The town is in the process right now of developing those principles and how we're going to apply them in the future. And so I feel that we should begin to evaluate what we're doing against those principles, even though we don't have them written in stone in our local policy. This is these are the best standards that are going forward. I circulated to all members of council and to Mr. CAO the results of a seminar that Shannon Fernandez and I both attended last week. And there are many communities that have extensive, I'm talking 5, 10, 15-year examples of case studies where these LID principles have been implemented and then they've received this long-term evaluation. So and the question that I have, the first question that I have to Mr. Graham and possibly the CAO, because they may not know exactly, but how do we, and by the way, I don't have any issues with the decisions that were made around the Silva cells, because those, that is a very specialized technology, but it can also, some of the same outcomes can be achieved, although I don't believe that from what I saw in those case studies that the canopy is quite as broad as it would be with them. However, how can we quantify and can we quantify the success of the design work from the perspective of LID? Because otherwise, we're really just chasing our tails here. If cost is going to be the only factor that we take into account, we should probably abandon LID principles. So how are we doing in that regard? Mr. Chairman, first question.
Through who would like to take that? Mr. Director Graham?
Sure. Thank you. Three, Mr. Chairman, to Madam Mayor. Great comments, Madam Mayor. LID technology, I mean, we believe in it. It is a lens we are bringing to our projects. I personally feel, and you know, council in the next, I want to say probably April, I think we're planning it. Anyways, within the next couple months, we are bringing our design guidelines, our LID design guidelines to council for your support on that. So you can expect that in the future, in the near future. But as it relates to the Jordan Village project, we did look at LID where we could, and a few updates on that. So the soil cell technology, you know, we are using it also for stormwater runoff mitigation. So we are trying to incorporate that LID component with the soil cell component on the project. To give you a little bit of an update on the public parking lot, the large public parking lot, we wanted to look at permeable pavers. That's another LID strategy that you can use if it's appropriate. So we went into the design with that objective. However, upon further review with the design, with the geotechnical analysis of all the underlying soils, the recommendation coming back was that permeable pavers weren't appropriate for that location because of the underlying soil conditions were too clay, if you will. So I just wanted to highlight that we did look at it, but it was proven not to be favorable in this situation. So that is important to note. We do look at LID in some cases. In LID, there's many different strategies you can use. It's a bit of a toolkit, and like I said, unfortunately, permeable pavers weren't favorable at that location. We are also working on that design to look at how we can maybe incorporate bioretention swales or grass line vegetated swales around the parking lot perimeter. So we're looking at those opportunities to try and incorporate some LID measures into that. Again, balancing also too that we're trying to maintain the number of parking lot spots as well. So we don't want to lose those. So we're looking at that balance, but those would be a couple examples of how we've applied LID to this project to date.
Okay, that's, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to hear about the swales. I know that sometimes they can take up a lot of room, but good to know that we're going to evaluate that. Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up to Mr. Graham, I'm very pleased that you've mentioned specifically here the stormwater management strategy, particularly the pre-treatment of water, and also the impact on the 20 Mile Creek watershed. And what I'm interested in there is really the whole concept of not just looking at the hardscape that we've been talking about, but also what would happen in terms of the end of pipe or end of the road, I guess, in this case, where it goes down over the Red Bridge. How do we plan to control that water? Because it's hard for me to understand how much resistance will be achieved with the loss of so much pavement on the main street. Where will that water go, and what will be the condition of it when it gets down into the watershed?
Through Mr. Chairman to Madam Mayor, maybe I'll make a few comments, and maybe I'll ask Walter Neubauer to add to that as well. So, from a stormwater quality perspective, we have an obligation to treat the water to ensure that it enters the natural water course at an acceptable level. So, what I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using the Silva cells or the soil cell component. Again, think of it as a treatment train. So the soil cells are going to help filter out some of the stormwater, and then the stormwater is also connected to strategically placed oil grit separators in the roadway, and that will achieve our quality control of the stormwater. As far as sort of the end of pipe measures, we are looking at, or we have to look at any erosion impacts, and not aggravate erosion in those areas. And I don't know if Mr. Neubauer would like to maybe make a comment to that effect or not.
Yes, through you, Chair, to Mayor Easton. The project has two stormwater outlets, one at 4th Avenue and the current outlet for the commercial district in behind the plaza there. So we will be looking at, or we are looking at as part of the design, especially at the 4th Avenue outlet, energy attenuation, riprap, for the quantity control and for the erosion. And then there is an existing structure behind the plaza where there's an existing pipe system that we will be connecting to, and we've evaluated that, and we don't feel that with the current design and the use of the soil cells that we're going to have an impact at that location either. So it has been considered.
Okay, this is very interesting, and I'm very pleased to hear this. Will you be testing the water at any point along the line? If you're putting in the grit and oil separators, are we pre-treating, or are we testing the soil at the front end as well as the lower end? How will we know that what we're doing is working, or isn't going to keep things in a more stable state?
Through you, Chair, to Mayor Easton, historically, we haven't done any of that sort of testing, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't do that sort of testing. And I can take that back to our project team and my colleagues in Public Works and figure out the best way to do that. Normally, what would happen is we would be cleaning out the oil grit separators on a regular basis to ensure that they are functioning as per the design.
All right, Mr. Chairman, all of this is new for many of us, and so I'm not suggesting that we do things one way or the other, but I do think we're getting closer to the ability to have cost-benefit analysis that takes into account a lot of different factors. And I consider this to be very progressive, what's happening. Of course, I don't think we've lost, I hope that we're not losing too much with the changes that have been made in terms of the street pavers. It is somewhat disappointing because this is a very special place. And of course, we want to put our best foot forward. That's always been the plan. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Walter. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mary Easton. I believe Councillor McPherson was next. Julie? Go ahead, Councillor McPherson.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Where are you? There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And excuse me, let me say I am very excited that we are at this point. It's been a very long journey to get to where we're at, and I think we are very, very close to signing off on the design and moving this thing to go for bid. So I'm absolutely supportive of the cost reductions that we are seeing in the Silva cells, and I am in agreement on overall on the move to more of a mix of pavers and asphalt. I raised a question in the previous meeting about pavers in front of residential homes, and fully expected that we would look at asphalt in those locations, and I see that we've made that move. So having an asphalt main street for the section of the residential area, I believe fits, and I think the cost reductions that we're going to see doing that makes sense. What I am concerned about, though, is losing some of the let's call it connectivity that we talked about right from the get-go in taking the pavers out in front of the retail. When you look at the design, and we want people that are visiting to know they've arrived. They know they've arrived. It's a destination. And if you look at arriving from 19th Street, they know they're arrived. They get to Snur Lane, it's got pavers. The entrance to the parking lot has got pavers. But if you were to leave that, or if you were to come up if you were to come up 19th Street and turn onto Wismer, you don't know you've arrived when you get to that retail piece. Yeah, we're going to have the little side pieces that are going to have, pavers, but it's not the same effect that you have when you arrive at that section right out of front of on the 20 and you've got pavers there. So, I think that we've got to really think about this. Again, I believe we all signed up that this is a transformational project. This is a destination that we're creating. And, although we're under the umbrella of COVID, and that we need to be conscious of that. And I think we are being conscious of that with the monies that we're taking out on the silver cells and on the pavers that would run more or less down Main Street. But I think we've got to be careful cutting too deeply into what our goal is, what our overall goal is in making this a destination. And I think if we were to put those pavers back in front of the retail, that would then give us that whole connectivity. I can go back to the slide that Director Graham brought up about better heat, better for pedestrians. I mean, that's where you're going to get your pedestrians, is right there. So all of the reasons to put pavers in on that slide are exactly why we should have them there. So, I think we've got to be careful not to be just looking for cuts, for looking for, where else can we take money out of this? I think we got to keep in mind, this is a 20-year project that has taken a very, very long time to get to this point. And, yes, we are under a pandemic umbrella right now, but 20 years from now, that we will be long gone from that. And we're building this for a long-term destination. So, it's exciting. I think the changes that are overall being made, again, I am supportive of. I just think we need to really reconsider what's happening right out in front of on the 20 and all those retail operations there, and make it connect with the town square that's up at the top, with Snur Lane. Make it connect at that end, so people know they're still there at the destination. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor McPherson. Councilor Bernay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Reimer. So I have a number of questions. I'm sure you're going to probably limit me to 3. I wasn't planning on starting with this, but I appreciate the CAO making the comments that he made. And I completely concur. And I think that's where I need to start. We need to be open and transparent. Those were the CAO's words. I believe we need to do that. So what bothers me is, we're not really talking about total costs on this project. We're talking about $12 million, and we're talking about what we've cut. But in the 2020 budget, if you go back to the 2020 budget binder, we put in $1.567 million to bury the underground. So in my mathematics, that's 13.567. The CAO said we had some partnership with NPI. So Chair Reimer, I'd like clarification, and I don't want to be charged with a question on this because it's a clarification from the CAO's comment. If we add up the 13.567 with the 1.567 that was in the 2020 budget, where are we now with the 50-50 sharing from the NPI? I'd like to know what that number is from the 1.567, because we're talking about open and transparency here.
Could we get clarification on that, Mr. CAO?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to look to, I think Director Graham probably has the exact amount. Him and I were chatting earlier today. So I think of the 1.567, it's a little over 700,000, but Dave, you've probably got the exact number.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if Walter, can you make a comment on that? I'm pretty sure Mr. CEO has hit it on the head in terms of the value, but I know you have it. You looked at that earlier today.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Brunei, our cost sharing arrangement for the actual tendered construction was nearly $600,000. We also have other fees attached to that, inspection fees, design fees. We have a contract with an electrician to help us do the underground conversion. So currently, I estimate the total value of the underground conversion works to be about $700,000 town cost. We will have other costs associated with some change order extras that have come about through the contract, as well as there'll be other cost share arrangements that we need to finalize once the design is finalized with the other utilities, but I don't feel that those are overly significant at this point.
Okay, that's great. So is it safe to say, do we all agree then if the number was 12 million and now we're saying it's 700,000 instead of 1.567, so it's 12.7 million total cost, and we found so far a savings of 1.1. So we're looking at 11.6 for this construction project as it stands today. Is that safe to say? Can we all agree on that so that our taxpayers at home that are listening kind of know what we're talking about here? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would say that is a fair statement over multiple years and multiple budget cycles, but that is a fair statement through your chair to the council.
Okay, great.
That's okay for your clarification. No penalties issued. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So through you to the director, you know, when we last sat in front of IBI, there were tremendous amount of questions with regards to the pavers. We heard that night about maintenance. We heard about, you know, the concerns about driving on the pavers and the sound. And what we heard that night from IBI was no problem, no problem, no problem. I'm wondering, maybe I've got too much time on my hands since I've retired, but I've spent a lot of time doing research on municipalities that have used pavers, that have ripped up the pavers, and we don't have to go too far to Pelham or to the city of Niagara Falls with their phase 1 and phase 2 of reconstruction of Clifton Hill to look at where pavers were pulled out and concrete, stamped and pressed concrete or asphalt are used. So through you, Chair, to either the director or to Walter, did we reach out to any of those municipalities where we know silver paving stones have been used to find out what their comments were on maintenance on pavers and information back on the success of Silva cells? Did we do that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yeah, through Mr. Chairman to Councillor Bernay's questions. Yes, we did, Councillor Bernay. In terms of pavers, we did learn, you know, from a couple municipalities where they did have some problems with pavers. Some of it was, excuse me, how they were, you know, installed. Some of them were installed in sort of this concrete trough, if you will, which created some problems with drainage. What our consultant is proposing, again, in consultation with, you know, geotechnical experts in this, is we're going to be putting them on compacted base with sand, and then there's this geotextile fabric that we're going to put underneath them, and they're going to be locking type pavers. They're going to have a locking type, trying to think of the word here, but they're going to lock together, and they're using herringbone pattern. So our consultant is Unilock, sorry. Yeah, thank you. So our consultant is pretty confident in terms of that sort of different approach, if you will, for pavers. I mean, in terms of maintenance for pavers, you know, winter operations is a little more challenging. We have to understand, you know, what we're going to need to do for winter operations. We have to look at, I don't want to get into all the details, but a nylon covering on our blade. So, you know, as part of this entire design, we have looked at the operational impacts and what we need to do to maintain what we're building, right? So that's very important. We don't want to design something and build something where we haven't evaluated the operational needs and what we'll need to do for that. So, you know, those are some comments. You definitely want to put pavers over top of new infrastructure. In our case, we're putting all brand new infrastructure in the roadway. So, you know, we're going to be starting off in a good spot with all new underground infrastructure below the pavers. In terms of the soil cells, you know, the municipalities we reached out to, they're happy with the soil cells as it relates to tree health. You know, they really suggest it's a great option for where we have hardscape surfaces around the tree. And, you know, because if you don't do something, those trees will really never grow. They'll be starved their whole life with compacted soil underneath and not getting any type of water. You know, so that was the feedback we got. I mean, when we talked to our experts at VRIC with the soil cells, again, it's a balance, right? And that's what we've done here. We've looked at, you know, where we can balance these components, and where we felt, you know, we don't need to do them, we've removed them.
If I could just interrupt Councillor Bernay, it's past 10 o'clock and we need to just have a show of hands from council that it's okay to proceed past 10. If that's okay, Julie, a show of hands is fine?
Fine.
That we can proceed past, show of hands for, I think we're good, right?
We're good.
Go ahead, Councillor Bernay.
Well, that's great, Chair. So, you know, I appreciate the director's comments on that. What I'm hearing from the director is that our design team is quite confident that through the research and diligence we've done, that we're confident that the use of paving stones outweighs any maintenance costs or durability as he's laid out in terms of snow removal. So I appreciate those comments. My second question through you, Chair, and again, I preface this, you know, I got too much time on my hands. I've read a lot of, you know, studies on these silva cells, and my research indicated anywhere between $12,000 and $25,000 per silva cell, depending on the type of tree, the size of the tree, and the type of grate. I reached out to Public Works, and they've told me the number they're carrying in this is approximately $17,000 per cell. So through you, Chair, I know there's a tremendous amount of markup in these silva cells, and I can tell you that the town of Banff just did a $13 million project in their downtown Banff. And I'm wondering if our design team has reached out, has thought outside the box, as the town of Banff just recently done on their project that was completed this fall, to purchase the silva cells directly from a manufacturer and supply those to the winning proponent of our bid.
Thank you, Councillor Bernay. Through to Director Graham.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councillor Bernay, great suggestion. We'll definitely take that back. That's not something that I believe we've thought through yet. We haven't prepared the tender packages, but maybe it's an option we should consider. I don't know, Mr. Neubauer, do you have any comments on that as it relates to purchasing the soil cells?
Sorry, there's something going on with my computer here. Through you, Chair, to Councillor Bernay, no, that is not something that we've considered at this point. That's not to say that we can't. We'd have to, through our purchasing process, we'd have to evaluate the best way to do that. There are a number of different suppliers that provide this type of structure. So, but that's something that we can research and we can look into to see. I've actually met with one of the suppliers and spoken to another. So it's not like these suppliers aren't available to us. Should we want to proceed down that route. Currently, the intention was to include it in the tender, get competitive bids, and give the contractors an opportunity to work with those suppliers. As I said, there are a number of suppliers that could provide this product, and we figured that that would be the best way to get competitive pricing. But that doesn't mean that we can't look outside the box and possibly try something different. So thank you for that information and that suggestion, and we will look into it.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you. So Chair, I really at this point don't have another question. I just want to make a comment that, you know, I am very supportive of this project for all the reasons that everyone has talked about that are in our, you know, 2020 capital project details, you know, whether it's connecting communities, whether it's resilient communities, you know, whether it's being responsible and sustainable, you know, whether it's about being an economic driver as we come out of COVID, so that we're ready to bring tourists to this area. But I also feel that we have an obligation, and this council and other councils have taken pauses on critical steps. And I agree with Councillor McPherson. This has been a long time coming. Some could argue it's been 20 years. And I'm very cognizant of that. And I'm not suggesting that we should delay for the sake of delaying. But I believe my comment is such that we have taken a pause on the Jordan Museum, and we have taken a pause on the Camden Fire Hall. And why did we do that? Because we were concerned about many aspects, sometimes of design, sometimes of where funding was coming from, sometimes about governance, sometimes about what programming would look like when we open the door. And those were projects that I suggest were $3 or $4 million. This is arguably the largest project, road reconstruction project that the town of Lincoln has ever taken on and might ever take on in its history. A 12 or a $13 million, wherever we land on, is a huge project. And all I'm saying is, I believe after being so diligent during our budget, coming in with a responsible budget, that we owe it to the citizens of this municipality to make sure that yes, this project is going to be a transformational project, but it's one that we can justify every dollar that we spend on this project. And if it takes another 2 months or another 3 months to make sure that our design team equips us with that information, I would only suggest that we take the time to do it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bernay. I see Mr. Wagner has his hand up. Lawrence, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Bernay. In regards to his question about going to vendors direct, that's not a typical process because it's not fair and transparent when you consider procurement. We would go out typically on bids and tenders, and most vendors do not allow you to go direct to manufacturer because they have wholesale agreements with wholesalers in the marketplace. It allows them to, I guess, get their products out to a wider variety. That said, if the vendor does not have restrictions on any type of agreement like that with wholesalers and such, they're more than welcome to apply on bids and tenders for a contract that's posted by the town to make sure it's fair and transparent and to make sure that you ensure value for money for your taxpayers. And with that, I've said my piece.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Yep.
Questions or comments related to the report?
We have
Councillor
McPherson.
Councillor McPherson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just in follow up to my comments. So how do we proceed here? Is it a direction to staff to investigate that and to come back with the obviously come back with the cost, the cost, and or is it a friendly amendment, or how do we want to proceed as far as pavers out in front of the retail? Through you, Mr. Chair, probably to Madam Clerk.
We can add it to the recommendation And that would be an amendment to add, if you wish, Councillor McPherson. It would be a staff direction within the motion.
That's fine with me.
Councillor first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have a few comments to make unless I see other hands before we address that. Just a couple of quick comments. When I look at this project and the total cost, in general terms, in all phases, I feel it's too much. I definitely agree with some of the comments that Jordan Village needs this work. It's overdue for a lot of reasons. And in no way do I want to put this on the back burner or wait for a sunny day or sit on it for a while. I really like the way it dovetails with our council priorities. I really like the way it's financed. I think the staff did a lot of work on that. So I understand the levy implications, the fact that there is none. So I like that. But I still believe our reserve and DC dollars have to be spent wisely. Silva cells and pavers have been, it looks like we've had a target on them, maybe for some of us. And that's where some of my comments, concerns would lie. And it's unfortunate that most of the components that we would have in this project are somewhat fixed. We can't really do this project without them. I feel that we are asking trees to grow in an area where they're not really made to grow. We're surrounding with concrete, asphalt, hard surfacing, and we're asking them to grow there. And we're spending a lot of money to ask them to grow there. And this is it's a difficult area, not just in this Jordan revamping of the Jordan Village, but in other subdivisions in general. We ask trees that we plant on town property to grow on boulevards. Boulevards during construction are the ones, that's where all the crappy soil is. That's where the utilities are. That's where all the mess happens. And that's where we ask trees to grow. And so I understand, this idea of getting trees and a canopy. I feel that we're probably asking too much of it for this project. I don't want to omit these totally. Like the Silva cells, sorry, to be more specific. Perhaps view this as a pilot project, kind of use that mindset, maybe have a few key locations. I realize that staff has already gone through that process, but minimize it some more, and maybe incorporate it into a new project. So the installation of these Silva cells is a lot easier and a lot more cost effective when you have a brand new subdivision. We're installing these in existing infrastructure, and it's a pain in the neck, the bottom line. So maybe we look at something that's coming up down the road where we can incorporate the Silva cell technology and it's put in a brand new subdivision, Prudhome's. I also think that while the EA recommends the Silva cells, it doesn't require that we use them. And possibly with the trees, staff, I think Director Graham had mentioned that we're going to engage the 19th Street residents. Perhaps maybe some of the Main Street residents could be encouraged to grow some trees on their properties as well. I feel pavers would be reserved only for the museum front boulevard, the main square by King Street, and the crosswalks. I want to respect and acknowledge the fact that staff and design team have put a lot of work into this. So I don't make these comments flippantly or without acknowledging all the work they've done on it. So I want to thank them for that as well. I don't have a dollar figure to throw out there either, or an amount. I just think some maybe dovetailing a little bit onto Councillor Bernays' thing, that we need to spend it wisely. And I think in this case, our money is better spent with more conventional alternatives to our stormwater management and our tree growing. I certainly want this project to proceed, but I would definitely like it at a lower cost. Any other comments, questions, input? Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, again, just a question to Madam Clerk. With the amendment that came from Councillor McPherson, is there a motion on the floor?
Well, I believe Councillor Reimer was speaking to that amendment that was put on the floor.
Can you repeat the amendment again? If you don't mind.
The amendment
Yeah,
that I heard, and if I'm mistaken, Councillor McPherson, please chime in, but the amendment to say that staff investigate cost of pavers for the north section of Main Street along the retail section and come back to committee with costs. That's pretty much what I caught from that, but is that correct, Councillor McPherson?
That is correct. The only clarification I would ask of the clerk is, I believe his comments were for the overall project.
They were in general. That's correct, Councillor.
They were not targeted at the amendment.
No.
So, I think that needs to be clarified. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to clarify.
Mr. CAO, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think we could probably give you a ballpark for what those pavers would cost in that particular area. And so, I mean, there's one of two things, or there's probably multiple things council could do. But, one of a few things I think that council could consider relative to pavers. You're probably looking for that commercial section of around 150,000 additional dollars. So we could include these as a provisional item in the current contract. And if we get, I think, positive tendering prices, we could accommodate that within the set budget. Or council can look at potentially a motion this evening that would see us add those monies. But yeah, you're probably looking at something within that scope, within that range.
Thank you, Mike. Councilor McPherson, comments to that?
The only comment I would have is, to me, that's money well spent. That is really money well spent. That if we're going to enhance the overall destination, we spend, that kind of money often, with many projects, and do it without a bat of an eye. So if it's $150,000 to do that, I'm in. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So just to clarify, Councilor McPherson, then your motion is, your motion is still on the floor then, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
If I could, Mr. Chair, so it's not to report back on the cost, then I'm going to suggest if the direction or the motion that is on the floor is to actually incorporate those costs into the current budget, just for clarification purposes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Julie, I have some other hands raised, but we should deal with this motion first.
Unless somebody wants to speak to the motion, I see Councillor Brunet, if it's to speak to that amendment right now.
Councilor Brunet, do you want to speak to that amendment?
No, I don't.
Okay, Julie.
Okay, so just so that I have this to amend, sorry, I have Councillor, oh, no, not Councillor Brunet. I have Mayor Easton's hand raised.
Mayor Easton, do you want to speak to this motion?
I do. Mr. Chairman, is this, should we be considering, I guess through you to the CAO, should we be considering looking at a trade-off for funding that money either through the delay of possibly work in the parking lot, or is that a place where we could find some of this money or all of it?
Through Mr. Chair, I'm going to suggest that's probably not the best course of action. I think when we go out and we tender a project like this, I think we can see if there's an ability to have further conversations, negotiate, and again, if positive pricing was to come in. But I'm not sure there's an ability, unless we clearly delineate that at the front and at the outset, that we can start swapping that way. I mean, there's a possibility that we can go back, look and remove something else and trade it off for this particular piece. But I would say, and I think what I'm hearing in terms of the motion is let's add this particular piece. Now, we could report back to you that pricing was able to accommodate this within the existing budget, But I don't know that until we're going to go out to tender and until we receive pricing. So I don't believe it's appropriate, or at least at this particular point in time, I can give you some level of comfort that we would be able to swap something in and out.
Okay, so
Thank you, Mr.
let's
Steele.
just leave that, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. CAO, did we not take somewhat of this kind of an approach when we were addressing the Camden Fire Station, where we were willing to look at a number of different possibilities depending on how the costs were coming in?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So, I mean, I think the simple answer to that, Mary Easton, is yes, we were able to do that. I think when you look at a facility and a building, the conversation we had with the proponent at that particular point in time is, here's our budget, here are our needs. Can you come back with something that fits within that particular budget? A little bit harder here, I think, as a number of councillors said, where a lot of the work and a lot of the budget dollars are really on the subsurface infrastructure that's required here. And so while there are abilities and some monies that go into the aesthetic appeal of this particular project, most of it is really on hard infrastructure that's required. And so, I think we've done that where projects make sense. This is a little bit more of a complex project. That is not to say that whoever the successful proponent is, that we can't have further conversations. And so I think the recommendation I gave you about adding it as a provisional item, and if we're able to negotiate and incorporate that, then that's what we would try to do. But that doesn't give a level of, I think, exactness or a level of for sureness that Councillor McPherson's motion is suggesting.
Okay, well, that's very useful. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mary Easton. Do we have any other comments to the motion? Let's deal with that first. Councillor Brunet, anything to the motion? No. And Mary Easton, your hand is down or raised?
Oh, I'm sorry. It is
Okay.
down.
Julie, could we have an update on what that motion looks like or reads like?
Yes. So the amendment reads that staff will incorporate the cost of pavers for the north section of Main Street along the retail section and approve in the capital budget.
Okay, that's good. Councillor McPherson?
Yes, that's good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we'll take a
Sure.
vote on that. And that would be added to the bottom of the recommendation. And that's just for the amendment. And then we'll vote on the
Great.
entire. So
Okay.
Councillor Brunet,
So we're voting just on the amendment.
we
Strictly
are.
on the amendment, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Micklef.
Councillor McAkay is with us.
Oh, I'm sorry, he is declared an interest. And Councillor Pachariva is absent. My apologies. Councillor Reimer,
No.
Councillor Rajima,
Yes.
Councillor Russell,
Yes.
Councillor Timmers.
No.
Is that a no?
Yes, no.
Thank you. Mary Easton,
Yes.
that carries.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay,
Any other comments? I think there was still some hands. Councillor Brunet. This is to the report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to put it on the table. So, I supported Councillor McPherson for, his view on adding the paving stone in that specific area, but it's going against everything I'm saying here in the fact that I'm looking for a reduction in cost, and we just potentially added 150,000. So, at the end of the day, I'm just going to hang my hat on the fact that I really feel this project is important in so many ways. But, we are in COVID, whether we admit it or not, we're in COVID. We've done a wonderful job being responsible to our residents with a very good, responsible budget. In good faith, I think, I would like to see, and I hate to put up a stop sign, a temporary stop sign to see if our staff can look at additional costs, but I'm in the same camp as Councillor Reimer, Chair Reimer, that this project, one dedicated project, one road rehabilitation project, whatever you want to call it, for the dollars we're spending in one area of the municipality is grossly too much money. And if we can find some savings and get it down, I would be a lot more amendable to proceeding with this project. If the question tonight is, are we willing to approve the capital expenditures at 9.9, I will be voting no. I'm asking through you, Chair, if there's any way staff can consider looking at finding additional costs. And if that is possible, I would ask for a deferral on this for a appropriate time that the CAO could chime in on. I'll leave my comments at that.
Thank you, Councillor Brunet. Mike, would you want to respond to that, or staff?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think, you know, at the end of the day, when we look at the Silva cells that remain, and if I look at where we would potentially find budget dollars, knowing we've just added 150,000 potentially right now, you know, the total amount of Silva cells we're looking at is probably around $350,000. So there isn't a huge amount. And again, you know, I don't know what the target council is looking for. So the only comment I'd make, and I don't know if it helps your deliberations at all, is that if we were to eliminate every single Silva cell, it only provides, when we add the motion that was just passed, a net of 200,000 and potentially to what expense, if we look at, you know, what we've heard from our neighbors or our neighborhoods in that particular area, specific to the tree and the tree canopy. But again, I am, as is all staff and council's hands, should that be a direction you want to go.
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Okay, that being the case, Chair Reimer, I would like to put a motion on the floor to put it to a vote to ask that this be put back for a deferral, to ask staff for additional savings on this project.
You got the wording on that, Julie?
Yeah, to defer for staff to investigate additional savings regarding the Jordan Village Improvement Project. So
Okay.
hands up.
Speak to the motion. I believe Councillor McPherson, do you want to speak to that motion?
Yes, I do. Can I go ahead?
Yes, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would just say that, you know, as Councillor Brunet pointed out, we started this this project at over 12 million. In fact, he's pointed out quite nicely that we are over 13 million, and we've brought that back significantly with the direction that we made to staff over the last couple of months since we saw the presentation by IBI Group back in December. So I'm not sure we're going to gain a lot, excuse me, in taking more cost out without impacting the overall project. You know, I would certainly support looking for funding and trying to come up with some funding as we did, you know, with the museum, and look to other levels of government for funding. And there is infrastructure funding that is coming out as a result of the pandemic we're in, and maybe that's an option. But I don't know if we're going to squeeze any more out of this project. It is a significant investment in the downtown Jordan area. There's no question about that. No question about that. And we've known that. We've known that this project was going to be north of $10 million. We've known that for years. So I really hesitate trying to direct staff to start looking for more dollars in what they've already done a great job in reducing the overall cost of the project. And there has been significant changes to the project. So, Mr. Chair, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. CEO Kirkopoulos, did you have your hand up?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I did it, but I mean, you know, I would suggest, Mr. Chair, I think to the comment around senior levels of government and potential funding, that was a conversation that was had earlier today amongst staff, and we will continue to look to see if there are opportunities to get other sources of funding. There will be a number of infrastructure programs that are announced. A lot of them do have associated timelines and completion dates, but that's definitely something that we will look to address. We will look to, I think, apply for should there be opportunities.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Russell, to the motion, comments or questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Again, through you, again, just a comment. Obviously, again, I think everybody is very appreciative of what staff has done, not only in putting this all together, but also coming back and finding those efficiencies that Councillor McPherson did allude to with a project this vast. Sometimes when you get too close to it, it's hard to break out small little things and see if you can replace them with something maybe a little bit smaller and find a little bit of savings. But I also do respect what Councillor Bernay mentioned, and also yourself, Mr. Chair, about, again, some of the technology that is being implemented and whether or not there are other alternatives, and that given the current state of the pandemic, referring this back to staff for just that final kick at the can, I think it behooves us to make that step. Again, everybody I think understands fully the importance of this for Jordan, not only in the short term, but in the long term, in being one of those destination markers that we're trying to implement as far as a long-term tourist strategy. So again, I don't think, again, taking hopefully not that long of a time, maybe again, a few weeks, maybe a month or so, to see if there are any sourcing opportunities to maybe bring down some of those costs, or at least look at some other alternatives, just to see if there are any. And if there aren't, again, come back and maybe we have another conversation. But again, I support Councillor Bernay in his motion to refer it back to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Julie, could we get time to get that motion together? Could you read that motion for us? And we'll, I don't see any other hands. I guess we can go ahead and vote on
Councillor
it.
Bernay, you have your hand up. Did you want to say?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Bernay.
Yeah.
Didn't see it.
That's fine. I appreciate Councillor Russell's comments. Through you, Chair, to the clerk, I would just ask that it be a recorded vote and that those votes be captured in the minutes moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor Bernay.
Yeah.
If I could make one question here just before Mayor Easton, just with regards to this, just to Director Graham, could you, Dave, could you comment just on tendering timelines? Does this affect how this affects tendering timelines, just for our information?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Yes, I mean, the further we delay approving the budget or moving the project forward, we are delaying tendering. So that is something to consider, when you're looking at your decisions, but you need to feel comfortable as well. So, we are currently looking at tendering into late April currently where we sit right now. So if that helps with any timelines.
Yeah. Just to throw it for information's sake. Thank you, Director Graham.
Yep.
Mayor Easton, please go ahead. To the motion, Mayor Easton.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So we have two things here that I'm looking at. One is Councillor Bernay's suggestion at investigating additional savings. And I'm also looking at the comments that were made regarding what is really there to investigate. And so what I'm thinking about and what I could support, because I am never a fan of deferrals or referrals, because they reports should stand very strongly, and they normally do in Lincoln on the basis of the report. But if we're looking at a cost-benefit analysis of options in some cases, that I could support, but I'd certainly like to see what Mr. CAO has to say about that approach. At least in that way, I would know that it isn't the eraser approach but that we would be making decisions based on the checks and balances all along the way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Comment to that, Mike?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I mean, in terms of a cost benefit analysis, I mean, I think it's something staff can always entertain. I just don't know what it does from a timing perspective and what readily available information we have that could help address that. I think where we would look to cut budget potentially, there's only a few areas. Again, most of the work is subsurface. So when we look at large projects, whether it be, $3.5–4 million for Drake, yes, I think what people mostly see is the asphalt, but really the large costs are water and sewer underground. So when I look at, the pavers that we're going to use on the south end, potentially now also on the north end, to kind of anchor both sides. When I look at all the work happening on 19th Street, again, you've got about 350 grand in pavers. We've added another 150. As I said, it nets out to 200 of a difference. If council wants me to go look at those and determine are there some other elements to that, we've already entered the contract for bearing of the wires, which was a decision that was previously made. So, I mean, as always, we can look at a cost benefit analysis. I'd have to discuss with staff, Mayor Easton, what specifically we're coming back with to address the cost benefit business case perspective, to give you some semblance of what would be included in that and how that helps further decision making. So unless any of the other staff have anything further to add, I'm not I'm probably not able to give you any level of detail other than what I've just said relative to where we would find that cost benefit analysis. I think if we're assessing it on the principles of the project and what council's priorities are, we've done that in terms of what you have before you.
Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess, the whole business, I guess it's, you get to a point sometimes, we've been working with this project for a long time. You get to a point where it's time to fish or cut bait. I think we're probably there. If there are elements of the project that we can't live with, then I guess, I think at this point I would call the vote.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Paul Diani, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. And this was really just a point of, that can be used for council's deliberations. I know it was mentioned previously by the CAO. We can definitely look, and we have looked and can continue to look, especially because the province and the federal government are coming up with infrastructure funding related to COVID on sources of funding for this project. But, just to be clear, it does take time to apply for these projects. It does take time to advocate for these projects. And if successful, it does take time to enter negotiations or agreements with upper levels of government. So just a point that can be used by council in deliberations this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, we're gonna go to the vote.
We have Councillor McPherson.
Yeah,
there.
quick one, Councillor McPherson.
Thank you. Thank you. And just a point of clarification, and thank you for bringing up the tendering piece of this. So through you to Mr. Graham, Director Graham, we're going to start this year with 19th Street. And much of what we talked about tonight does not, the Silva cells, yes, but does not necessarily affect 19th Street. Is there time to investigate other forms of funding or other cost reduction efforts without affecting the project starting this year? Because, when I hear about, we're now at April, I'm really, and now we are looking for a deferral. I'm really concerned that this thing's going to go into the summer and we're going to miss the whole year. And then we're probably going to be looking at a price increase next year for the project that we could have been doing this year. So I think we've got to have that as part of the discussion through you, Mr. Chair, and to the director. How do you see that?
Okay, just before you start, Director Graham, just this question, and then we're going to vote on the amendment. Okay, go ahead, Director Graham.
Sure. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councillor McPherson. I think we want to be in a, we want to be in a position to tender a project and tender its scope, its design, for the most part. I mean, there's areas where we can kind of tweak things, but, once we go to a tender and we execute a contract with a contractor, we want to be on fairly solid ground that we know what we're doing. We're confident with what's included in the design. Maybe for smaller pieces, we can tweak things and look at those opportunities. I know Mike mentioned it earlier, we could look at including provisional items in the tender, maybe some optional pieces where, if we get good pricing, we can look at, adding some things. I think we have those options to look at as well, if that's something that, council would like us to include. But although we're doing the 19th Street works first, that's the plan. It is one large project. We are tendering it as one contract, if you will.
Okay. Thank you, Director Graham. Okay. Julie, can you read out this motion for us, please?
Yes. So it's actually a refer. So it's referring report PW01-21 back to Director of Public Works to investigate cost savings regarding Jordan Village Improvement Project and come back to a future committee of the whole meeting. So we're going to call the vote. And this is moved by Councillor Brunet. So Councillor Brunet?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
No.
And Councillor Miklik has declared an interest. He's not voting. Councillor Patriva is absent. Councillor Reimer?
Yes.
And Councillor Rajima?
No.
That's a no?
That's a no.
Thank you. Councillor Russell?
Yes.
Councillor Timmers?
Yes.
Mayor Easton?
No.
And that fails. That is 4 recorded for yes, and 4 recorded for yes, 3 recorded for no, and the other 2 are absent.
So just clarify that, Julie, that.
Yeah, so we don't have majority. It's failed.
Is it
you
4-3?
You just 4.
It's
4
4
yes, 3 no.
I'm sorry, I was counting
okay.
another counselor. I apologize. No,
No problem. Just
sorry, I didn't mean to give everybody a heart attack there. I also gave
okay.
myself one at the same time.
So just for clarity's sake, again, we've got 4 yes.
Yes, yes.
3 against.
Right, it's late.
So
yes.
And so this referral passes.
Yes.
Cool, good. Okay. So help me, Julie, what do we do with the rest of this? Sorry, is there any more comments before I move on? I think we've exhausted everybody.
Sorry, I apologize.
No problem. What do I do with this motion now, Julie? How do I read
So
this?
it's been referred.
Okay, it's been referred.
Yeah.
All right. So we can bring.
Through you,
Councilor
Mr.
Nick-
Chair. Mr.
Sorry,
Chair.
go ahead.
So I wouldn't mind a little bit of direction from council. So what am I going back with staff to actually cut? So I don't want to bring something that council doesn't want. We've got a motion on the floor right now that adds pavers. So I just need some direction from council as to what you would like me to go back and discuss with staff and come back with. Or are you leaving it up to staff to come back with something? I do think in light of the conversation this evening that some direction is appropriate.
Councilors, comments? Councilor Brunet?
Well, certainly my expectation was that we were handing it up to staff. I think that's, that's what staff is here for, and that's where we take our direction. I asked for, support on a motion to defer and hand it back to council. I wasn't expecting to come up with a long list, but, I've gone back and forth through you, Chair. I've gone back and forth with staff over the weekend, over the last 72 hours. I have been on record of saying that I am a huge proponent of pre-qualifying a tender. I think tender absolutely requests and requires a pre-qualification to ensure we get a solid contractor that is going to come in with a full desire to build this properly to our expectations and our levels over the next 3 years. It's a 3-year project. I think there's a lot of things that need to be looked at this project, to be perfectly frank. Pre-qualifications, sub-trades in the landscaping, and these will all hopefully bring some savings. And you know, respectfully, you know, the director of finance made his comments about the way we normally do things in Ontario, and I concur. I spent my career in that world, but I'm asking that we think outside the box. This is a $13 million project, and if we can't do that, then I guess we just wasted our time on the deferral. I'm looking for us to think outside the box, look under every stone, and try to come up with savings, because I think this project is too much money. That's why I brought it up there. I'm sorry to become emotional, but I don't think it's up to this council at this point in time to tell staff what to do.
If I could add a few, thank you, Councillor Renee. If I could add a few comments, Mr. CAO. For my 2 cents, the Silva cells and I realize we passed a motion already for the pavers, but those are 2 areas that I was the most concerned about. I don't think we should leave the idea, Councillor McPherson referred to it a little bit, about tendering this. And I know Director Graham's desire is to do this as one package, but you could certainly add to Councillor McPherson's line of thinking by dividing this up. My comment on one package tendering is we're asking a company to carry millions and millions of dollars for quite a long period. This isn't a one and done type of thing. This is 3 years. And so we're asking one company to carry that for more than 3, because there's holdbacks and there's deficiencies, and there's all kinds of other things. So right away, you take quite a few companies who would bid on maybe just the 19th Street part of this, you take them out of the equation. And so locally, you take them out of the equation. So I would just throw that out there. Those are just my 2 cents. Anybody else? For direction for Mr. CEO, we'll move on. I guess we can always, Councillor McPherson, he gets the last word. It's Councillor McPherson, then we're going to move on.
Just a question through you, Mr. Chair. You know, obviously we're up against it as far as timing is concerned. So what are we looking at for a deferral period? Is this a month? Is this several months? What are we in it? You know, if it's at several months, we're looking at 2022, because we just miss our window to start this project. We haven't even got the tender documents ready yet. So my question is, what are we looking at for a period for a deferral?
Director Graham, would you want to tackle that?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councillor McPherson, I would say, you know, we're looking at a good month at least for staff to come back, you know, with our report processes, to get them on agendas, to do the research and write the report. So I would say at least a good month, maybe 2. We would obviously make it a priority and try and get this information back to council to keep things moving, but that'd be my thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Director Graham. Mike, does that give you enough to move forward with?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, I heard you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I'll put my head around it. So, you know, I can't give you an answer right now. You know, I think at the end of the day, we've got to go back. We've got to look at where we can find some savings. There's things that happen post-procurement, not pre-procurement. You know, and pre-quals, at least my experience with pre-quals, are going to take some time. So again, I think there's a number of things we can look at. I'll probably need a day or so to put our collective heads around it.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Julie, do you want to bring back Councillor Mikulik?
Yes. Thank you very
Purgatory.
much. Yes.
Moving
Anything-
on,
Mhm.
welcome back, Councillor Mikulik. Moving on to number 8, confidential items. We have no confidential items this evening. Number 9, committee remarks. Do we have any committee remarks?
Mr. Chairman, I will forego my earlier request, and I will ask Mr. Chair McPherson to put this on the agenda of the next general business and finance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. And we also have comments. There being no further business, I call this meeting adjourned at 10:50. Sorry, just under the wire, Councillor Njima.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier tonight, we were talking about the comprehensive zoning bylaw review process, and I had asked him what the timeline is for that, but what I wasn't clear on is what I didn't ask clearly was what steps we still have to undergo. Is there one public meeting that we have to undergo before we bring it, before we have it on our desks, or what's next?
And that is through to Director Dale. Matt, go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so we're at a point now, we need to go forward with an open house first with the public, with agencies, and then from there we go to a statutory public meeting. Our goal though, before we get to that point, there's been, like I said, I think the last time we touched on it, that there's been some back and forth with the consultant. We just want to make sure that the draft zoning bylaws to a point where we are comfortable bringing it forward as something, that, yeah, it might need some tweaks, some minor refinement, but otherwise it is there. And that does take some time. It's a very comprehensive document. So that's where we're at this time. I hope that clarifies a bit for you.
I think so. So one more public information session, and we're hoping that that we're good after that. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Councillor Njima. There being no further business, thank you for all your work this evening. This meeting is adjourned at 10:55.
Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Thanks, Mr. Chair.